Good morning and welcome to the Upzone, where understanding politics is made simple. We are your two hosts, Mr. Elmer Floyd, former House Representative for the 43rd District in the state of North Carolina, and myself, Ms. Tisha S. Waddell, former City Council Representative for the 3rd District in the city of Fayetteville, North Carolina. We like to bring you the gritty in the city and the word on the curb. But before we do that, Mr. Floyd, how are you doing, sir?
Jeez, I'm wonderful. This is 1 hour that my phone won't ring, and the credits will give me a break. I mean, I love it. I love it every Thursday from
Yeah.
9:30 to 10:30. No credits call.
Well, I always say this and I'll say it again. We all know you don't owe nobody, but we'll let you go with that today. We're gonna let you have that today. Mr. Floyd, I'm so excited for us to be moving into the month of August. It's an exciting time for a lot of people. Our kids are getting ready to go back to school. Some of them are going off to college, some of them are matriculating up toward high school, or whatever. It's just a lot of different things going on. We've got some uncertainty where schooling is concerned. We're certainly going to touch on that in terms of the voucher program conversation today. Just very quickly, for the purposes of those who are catching us right out the gate, we're going to be talking about some businesses relocating from our downtown area, some economic development projects. We're going to, of course, talk about our government's response in terms of the voucher program. We're going to talk about the governor's withdrawal of his name from consideration as Vice President Kamala Harris's potential vice president. We've got a lot on our palette today to discuss. But before we get into any of that, what announcements you got for us, Mr. Floyd?
Well, one very important announcement today, and I just got it. Is that from I think it's from 3 to 5 at the Fayetteville State University Business Hub. They're going to talk about how to bid on the new facility that the county is building downtown.
Okay.
Today between 3 and 5 and give those persons some experience on how to build for that project. And the second announcement is that the NAACP is having their membership banquet, uh, and that's going to be at Fort Liberty. So to get the date and time, they can call 910-286-1283 to get more information about that. And for your Broncos, get ready for October the 26th,
Is that homecoming?
homecoming.
Okay, I got a question for you, Mr. Floyd. What has the NAACP done lately to be effective for its constituency base?
Uh, as a politician, uh, let me, if you don't mind, let me refer that to the appropriate committee.
Okay.
If you understand what I
I
mean,
understand
let me
exactly what you
refer
mean.
that to the appropriate committee.
I understand exactly what you mean. I'll say this before we
Exactly.
move on. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, Mr. Floyd, when I first ran for office, I think I went to NAACP meetings for the first year that I was in office. And after that, I was like, this is such a waste of my time. And I was like, if y'all need me, call me. But I'm gonna tell you somebody who consistently showed up, and I had a great deal of respect for this. Somebody who I always saw in those meetings was Kirk Deviere. I saw him at almost every one of those meetings, and I applaud him. Hey, if he's still going, maybe I'll ask him, what have they done lately? Because
It's the thing that I can be, because I was involved in that, and that was along with Troy Williams, and that was
Mhm.
driving, while black.
Right.
The city council person then, that was Senator Applewhite, didn't believe that it was true.
Yeah. People, I want to show you something, Mr. Floyd, because I thought this was very interesting. Simone Pemberton, after our conversation with Simone Pemberton, I wanted to reach out to Senator Applewhite directly to invite her to come on, because I want to always ensure that we have at least made an effort to give room to people to come and say their piece, right? Because I just think that I think it's fair. Now, whether they take that or not is completely up to them. I came across this, Mr. Floyd, because I said, surely she's got a website. And so when I put in her name, I just went to valapplewhite.com. Can you see tell me when you can see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I admittedly this is probably very old, but this is the website, and this says copywritten in 2013. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell everybody I don't think that Val Applewhite set this website up, because when you go into this, Mr. Floyd, can you still see my screen?
Uh-huh.
It talks about Val's mailers about the Tea Party, Val on crime, Val and the EEOC. So this is all during her time as a councilwoman. Val attacks veteran-owned local business. Val's vote on driving while black. Val on transit. So this goes back and sort of details her time as a city council representative and her position on some of those items. I bring this up because you mentioned driving while black. This is a very uncomplimentary page for her, I would say. So I'm sure that she did not sanction this. But can you imagine, Mr. Floyd, having pissed somebody off so bad that they make a website with your name? They take your name and prevent you from being able to make a website using your own name, and then turn around and post your record on that site. And for 11 years, they keep that site active, because this is from 2013. You had to piss somebody off for real, for real.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that that was very telling. I will be sending out a letter, because I discussed it with you. I will, for the purposes of our audience, I will be sending out a letter to invite her, because of course I can't reach her through this medium, because that's not, I don't think she's behind that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be sending her a letter to invite her. We'll see you guys if she accepts the invitation. And that's that. But Mr. Floyd,
Oh,
uh, that's that. That's that. But when you talk about ineffectiveness, sometimes we got to go back to remember exactly what people did or did not do.
well, you know, I said to a reporter yesterday that in my community does not make any difference. We go by name recognition.
And we certainly have
Doesn't make any
amnesia.
difference. Doesn't make any difference.
Yep.
Name recognition is what get people in office, not his or her ability to carry out the function of that office. And
Mm-hmm.
I say to you all the time, I look now toward my best company, Amazon.
Can you deliver?
Can you deliver it? That's how I'm looking at my future voting.
Can you deliver?
Can
Can
you
you
deliver?
deliver? Absolutely. And Mr. Floyd, while we're talking about can you deliver, Lumbee Guaranty Bank moved down to Hay Street when after the mayor had renovated the Crest building on Hay Street. They were the occupants of the first floor in that building, which was a real nice. It was a nice addition to the downtown footprint, because there was no bank down there ever since Wells Fargo, which was before Wachovia, moved from downtown, from the end of that, the entrance of downtown. Well, we're now seeing that Lumbee Guaranty Bank is working to combine their Hay Street location and their Hope Mills location, and they're going to be centering it on Village Drive. So, Mr. Floyd, essentially, we now see that in the wake of the rooftop restaurant closing and the Lumbee Guaranty Bank moving, what tenants remain at the Crest building?
Well, I think that Attorney Rogers is a very brilliant, person.
Why do we mention Attorney Rogers in conjunction with this conversation?
I mean, because he is a partner in
Right.
this business, and he is a very keen business person,
Mm-hmm.
very keen. So I can, I believe that he has, some vision plan for the downtown floor
Mm-hmm.
of that facility, of that building.
Right. So what do you believe that that is?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because what we see now is it will sit empty again. Well, as of July 12th, because they moved out July 12th, it will sit empty again. I think that another rooftop restaurant or a bar or something.
no, they're going. I mean, I believe you still have the second and third floor that as a word used for rent,
Hmm.
for activities. So I do believe that he is king enough, smart enough to attract a business to fit in that location. At one point in time, there was a restaurant that's at an airport in Raleigh that wanted to move into that facility there. So,
Well, I think what we see right now is, aside from, and I think, speaking of, we were talking earlier about efficiencies. This is an efficiency on behalf of Lumbee Guaranty Bank. My question now becomes, if you recall, some couple of months ago, we were having a discussion about vacancies in the downtown footprint, particularly along Hay Street, and there were about five businesses that were up for sale. So we saw the um the Husk Hardware building go up for sale. We saw, which we later found out with this second building that I'm getting ready to discuss, that it was just a tactic for pricing. But we saw the AIT building go up for sale, and three other buildings in that footprint went up for sale in that area. Do you think possibly that the Crest building will follow suit and become another one of the locations that is put up for sale in our downtown footprint?
I don't think so. I don't think so because right behind the Crest building, there's a lot of money spent in that in a building. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of money being spent in the building right behind there. So it's very valuable property there. And again, Attorney Rogers is very keen. He's also an attorney and a very business-minded person that he again is going to attract a business and business. Like I mentioned earlier, that there was several. I know for a fact that one restaurant again at the airport in Raleigh wanted to move into the restaurant part of the building.
Okay. Well, I guess we will wait and see what comes
But you
of
have to
that.
look at it though, Tish. You know, it's very difficult downtown because we just changed the parking formula downtown, and the council made to me a very bad decision when they changed the parking ordinance to accommodate the baseball team, which only has 81 days that they play in the city of Fayetteville, and then 365 days out of the year. So the business people get punished all year round because you couldn't park until after a certain time. And then again, being sarcastic, I had to call my lawyer to figure out when to come downtown for a meal because I didn't know whether or not it was a activity going on or not going on because then it become paid parking. And so, it's very hard. Just like Lumley, their customers want to come in and make a deposit, and they also want to withdraw. So if I come down there two times and park on the same side of the street, well, I'm sorry, not the same side of the street, but the street itself, I can be given a ticket. So it's a problem with way the order, although they changed it now, but it's still a problem with parking downtown. And I believe you was on the council when you built that 4-story parking deck with
Absolutely,
no elevator.
absolutely,
With no
absolutely,
elevator now. I mean,
absolutely.
so we talk about economic development, you know, come on. I mean, you build and you talk about people with disability, and then you do an obligated bond in order to pay for it, and you
And
still don't
one of
have
the things and one of the things that Councilwoman, now Mayor Pro Tem Kathy Jensen, taught me when I first came on council was that other people, and she used to say that, she's on the record saying this. You can find it, go back and watch meetings, and you'll see her saying this. is that when people want to do business with a community, when large developers decide that they want to, or business owners want to bring their business into a community, one of the first things they do is watch the meetings of that of the governing bodies in that community to see how they may be affected by how these people work. And I will say that if there's any I think that when we look at how our government has worked over the last 10 years, most certainly you see that there's a lot of discrepancy in how things are handled, which would give somebody a bit of pause if they're watching that as to whether or not this is really somewhere that they want to make an investment. And you make a very good point. We've got currently developers who are facing a lawsuit because of this very type of situation where you're doing business with an entity and there's not, well, so one of the things that we see in terms of economic development is a conversation about the titanium plant, Mr. Floyd. And there are some people have some questions. And Fayetteville Observer wrote an article, an opinion piece by Myron Pitts, and it said Fayetteville's nearly $1 billion titanium plant sometimes seems too good to be true. What are your thoughts about this, Mr. Floyd?
Well, to me, I'm of the same, I'm of the same opinion. Just like you mentioned earlier about how business began to look at us and begin to determine whether or not they want to locate in your community. But I'm trying to see this plant is not even. I mean, this organization is not even 2 years old,
Okay.
and it comes in and gets you to float and pass. Not that it costs the taxpayer any money, a $1.3 million bond.
So have you seen anywhere in your research a proven record of success for this company that would
Yeah,
indicate that this investment is going to be yield a return?
I mean, it is. What I've read that is too new to define.
Well,
You
then,
know,
Mr. Floyd, here's the thing, and I think again, to the credit of Kathy Jensen, if people are watching how our governing body functions, this community is a cherry picking ground for a company that has no legitimate background to come in and take gains from, because we repeatedly demonstrate that we will go along with that. If you look at PCH with the parking deck, if you look at the Muhammad Group or whatever with the tennis court and the sidewalks and all of the other unfinished projects, these are examples that you can come into this community, bamboozle this governing body, make your money, leave the project however you leave the project, and go on about your business with very little repercussion.
well, and that's what it looked like because I asked the person yesterday, and we're talking about melting, okay, the raw material into aluminum. I mean, titanium. But my question that I asked that person is how is the material is going to get to the facility? Okay, there will be no mining of this material. So how is it going to get to the facility when you look at the infrastructure around that? If you use 401 as an example coming out of Raleigh, that's a 2 lane stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if the only meaningful and fastest route is by rail or by 295 and 95.
Mm-hmm.
But the material got to get there, and it can't be just one box car at a time or
Right.
one truck at a time. So that it's gonna have to be many trucks, many box cars. But what I don't understand is that why should I have to buy the land, both governments, turn the land over to you? Okay, I'm
And then
buying it.
offer you all of these millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in benefits. Absolutely. And Mr. Floyd, this was interesting to me because I think that Mr. Pitts often is very kind to our local government. So whenever I see him come out and take a position that's not favorable to our local government, I always think it's worth really paying attention to. And one of the things that he said here is, I looked up which communities had similar projects up and running around the country. I did not find much of anything in that regard. He did find the titanium production, especially the original processing of it, can be very expensive. Perhaps related, there are not many such facilities, and it does not seem any U.S. company is mining the metal at present. And the Fayetteville site will not be mining either. You mentioned that. So this has been linked. That it says local officials inked the deal with Project Arrow. This company, the company American Titanium Metals, is slated to build a 500,000 square foot facility near the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Plant off Ramsey Street. The company will operate a mill to churn out aerospace grade titanium used in aircraft and military vehicle equipment. Inside workers will melt, roll, and finish titanium, according to a news release from the Fayetteville Cumberland Economic Development Corporation.
Well, teach that. What you also got to look at is that the jobs is 120 plus. Our base salary here is about 48,000. So that's about 2.5 times of what our base salary are here in Cumberland County. And it just seems like that's a little bit, you know, high of that, but it is an attractive tool there. But the other thing that I don't understand is that you then want to build this 500 square facility, 550,000 square facility. Then you want to turn around, given you got stockholders, and want to be annexed by the city of Fayetteville
Mm-hmm.
to pay county taxes and city taxes. Now that just seems to me a little bit far-fetched that you want to pay city taxes when you're trying to make a profit. What I
Mr.
can get
Boyd,
the same,
who is Dr. Franklin Clark? Because he is apparently the landowner of the property where this property, he was the landowner from which this property was purchased by these agencies. Do you know who that is?
you travel down Village Drive.
Yes.
Okay.
Give me more context because that doesn't help me.
Do you see all the economic development on Village Drive?
I do. So that's all land that was owned by Dr. Clark?
That is the Clark family.
Okay. Who is Dr. Clark?
He's
What
a
is his
physician.
practice?
He I don't know if he's still practicing, but he was a physician and he was an excellent basketball player at the University of North Carolina.
I'm gonna ask you a question, and it only matters for the purposes of me being able to visualize this individual. Is Dr. Clark black or white or something else?
Well, he's a white physician.
Okay, okay. And I'm assuming because he had ownership of so much land that he has deep roots in the Fayetteville community.
Yes.
Okay,
Very prominent family in the Fayetteville community. Very
okay,
prominent. When you look
okay.
at Village Drive and all those complexes around there, shrewd economic development person.
So what we can absolutely infer from this is that if anybody knows what they're doing in terms of making their money, it's definitely Dr. Clark because he is demonstrating that he knows how to get her done.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And this is the same site, I think it was the ethanol plant that wanted to be located, I think, some years back. The same location.
Mm-hmm.
That went belly up. They were going to convert corn and into some type fueling process. So but again, it's hard to invest that kind of money, and time and resources uh, for a country. I mean, for a company that has not that you cannot measure the success.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's a viable product that America uses, and I think China, Russia, and Japan are the only countries that really have
Yeah. Top
certification.
producers in the world are China, Japan, and Russia, with the US buying most of its titanium from its closest ally, Japan.
Yeah, you see, so but you know, it's there. It's something that we're going to have to look at. Like
Well, let's talk. Before we move past this, let's talk about this observation that Mr. Pitts made as well. The average salary is being stated at about $100,000 and something, right?
Hmm.
So the observation that Mr. Pitts made was about those salaries. They do draw your attention, but an average can be thrown out of whack if the chief executive or a group of top managers makes a lot of money. As it stands, salaries can range widely in the traditional titanium processing industry, depending on job and responsibilities, with engineers earning well over $100,000. Now, Mr. Floyd, what do you need to have in order to be considered an engineer?
I think you're gonna have to find you a 4-year college.
At least. Okay, so the engineers are going to be your executives who will be making $100,000 with salaries for production workers and melters in the $23 to $27 an hour range, according to job listings at Indeed and Glassdoor. So if we are talking about, let me grab my handy dandy calculator because I like to give actual numbers. We're going to go on the high end. If a person is making $27 an hour with a 40-hour work week, and that's 52 hours, 52 weeks a year, that's $56,160. Does that sound the same to you as $100,000+ a year job?
No, because the salaries are going to be really those high end jobs, the engineering, who who has the skill set.
Yeah, but how many people, how many executives do you think that they will need to manage a facility? Do you think that's where that 300 plus number is coming from? 300 executives to
Uh,
manage one facility?
well, what they're looking at also is the 3 to 500 at its peak.
Yeah, but even with that, so are we talking about 300 to 500 executives that will be making 100,000 plus, or are we talking about maybe 20 or 30 executives?
It's hard. It's hard to say, teach, because you don't know what the performance level. Of,
But Mr. Floyd, you know a business model. You're not gonna have a building with 500 executives and no labor force.
well, I believe that the engineering will be less than the labor force.
10% maybe. The engineers may be 10% of the workforce. So if you've got 30 to 50 people making $100,000, you've got 270 to 530 people, or 450 people who are making $23 to $27 an hour. So I think sometimes, and this was one of the things that I grappled with while I was a politician. I grappled with the way that we mixed words to sell something to the public and make it look like something other than what it really was. $56,000 is no small piece of change, but it's definitely not $100,000.
Well, like I said, Chief, our average salary is hovering around 40. The mid 40s.
Right.
Okay.
But the question that I pose to you, Mr. Floyd, is because we always talk about this being a tier one community. Does an investment like this, and I'm really interested in the answer to this. Does an investment like this move us from tier one to potentially tier two? Is this the type of investment we need in our community to do that?
It will help. It will help the movability of us
Hmm.
out, but it will take more than just this one company to
Okay.
move us. But this one company must come to fruit. But if we have another snag like we had in the project that you mentioned before, then it won't help us at all.
Right. So what are you hearing now? Let's talk about the snags. What are you hearing about the PCH development, the parking deck, the sidewalks, the fire station, the tennis court? What are you hearing about that in terms
Well,
of progress?
well, the city realized after going up and down the 4 floors walking that the contractors did not meet their obligation. So they have filed a lawsuit now. I'm just going to summarize for non-performance in agreement that was made. Okay, and
Yeah.
so they realized that the honeymoon that they had is over, and it
Yeah.
was over when they completed the deck that I had to go and get some bonds to do it, and I forgot to peek around the corner to see that the person that's overseeing the project forgot to put the elevators in. See, that would have been my first. That would have been my first indicator that something is wrong.
It was just a little oversight, Mr. Floyd. It was
Well,
just a little
no,
oversight.
I mean, I looked at it when I was employed with the city of Fayetteville. These projects were so new to the city that we couldn't address it, but we were buying into them. When we moved into the new city hall, the city hall, the developer, the contractor, what didn't even finish the product.
But see, that takes me back to what I said about what Mayor Pro Tem Jensen shared with me when I came on council. That takes me back to the notion that people watch our community and see where our strengths and our weaknesses are. And a shrewd business person will play on our strengths and our weaknesses.
And now, bear in mind that, and you were right, the Prince Charles, when it was first, some many years ago, had a $2.5 million grant, a HUD grant. And part of that grant that the developer or the business person must have within a 1 mile radius of that. Come the brilliant city hall, sign a 10-year lease for $500,000 for 10 years. So the person goes to the bank with what, $7.5 million guarantee money.
To start with.
Guarantee money. But the city of Fayetteville had to use their staff to complete the building so that we could move into the building.
Right.
Now you all just spent another $3 million to renovate the building again. So but that's we got to be a little bit more keen with our economic development, because I just don't see how in the world, I know you get tired of me saying it, you can build a 4-story parking there
and not put an elevator in it.
I mean, you can put the elevator in, and if you switch to the other development that the developers say they're going to be a hotel, motel, or whatever, office space, you can put that elevator to go up to the 5th, 6th, 7th floor.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build you a parking deck, and you want me to park on the 4th floor and walk down to the 7th, to the 1st floor, and then walk over there to the stadium to watch the baseball game. If I can get into the parking deck, because the parking deck that you paid for was already leased out by the stadium and Prince Charles. So you got very limited parking spaces, though you paid $17 million.
So it seemed that also as a part of this lawsuit, if I read correctly, they're also trying to block PCH from the sale of, because that was one of the other buildings that was for sale on Hay Street. They're trying to block that sale until all of this is resolved. So, Mr. Floyd, there's a lot going on in our downtown footprint, and everybody always felt like there was too much emphasis on development downtown. And maybe this is an example of that the development should have been leveraged to be able to spur the economy throughout the city versus just in the footprint of downtown.
We elect individuals, and we have a minority council that's still carrying out the original agenda, if you understand what I mean.
I understand exactly what you mean. And to say it very plainly, we have a council that's less concerned, and we have had a council that's less concerned with the economic impact for the people that look like them, and have made commentary based upon that, sold themselves based upon being pro-Black, or for the advancement of the Black community, which, by the way, Mr. Floyd, I never sold myself as, because I understood the implication of that in multiple ways. Yes, I'm a Black woman. Yes, I want to see people do well. Yes, I also understand that the advancement of all of our community means the advancement of all of its citizens. So that was never my selling point, but there have been people who that is specifically their selling point, and they have not lived up to that particular selling point.
Keith, let me say this to you. The most disgusting meeting that I attended in this community was at Kingdom Impact on Murchison Road. And we was told by 2 council persons that the developers was not going to develop in the Murchison Road area. So we had to vote to put that facility, I'm not going to put on Hay Street.
Mr. Floyd, I'm very well aware. I'm very well aware, because when I came on council, I was informed. I'm not going to say who. Well, I can say who told me, but I'm not going to say who told me, because they're no longer with the city, and so it doesn't matter. But I was in the office of one of our high-level staff members, and that high-level staff member informed me that the whole way that baseball stadium ended up downtown because they had it worked out where it was going to go at the end of Murchison Road. They were called into meetings at a prominent developer's office here in the city of Fayetteville. They were called into Ralph Huff's office and were told, move it or else, basically.
Yeah.
And their response was, yes, sir. And they moved it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it takes private, it takes public and private money.
Absolutely. Because they would not have been able to move forward with the development without the private investment. And let me say this, because I've always said this about Ralph Huff. He is a shrewd businessman. And so, like, even when I asked you about Mr. Clark, so clearly Mr. Clark is about his business. Dr. Clark, he knows what he's doing. Ralph Huff is about his business. He knows what he's doing. But what happens is you get people elected into office who don't know how to negotiate, who don't know how to communicate with high-level business executives, who don't understand the principle of play your position and understand how to make all things work together for the good of all the citizens. And they end up just being extensions of these shrewd business people. So they sit and go, like I told y'all this before. I was in a meeting and I sat at the very end of the dais. I was at the very end and I'm sitting there and we're having a meeting to discuss the UDO. DJ Hare sat to the left of me. I'm watching in the audience. We've got Ralph Huff in the audience and some other very prominent members because the UDO directly affects the work they do. They're sitting in the audience because they have a vested interest in making sure that we don't disrupt their work as much as possible. I observe a city council member lean forward, look past me, and look at Mr. Huff and say, does that meet your objective? Is that what you want? And I sat back and I said, is he for real asking this man how we're supposed to do our job?
See, you got to look at it. When you tell me, as an elected official, that I know that my constituents is going to have to help foot this project.
But Mr. Floyd, why are you using that word? Because that's exactly what Ralph Huff says. He says, I have a constituency too. And when he told me that, I was like, you a bad somebody. I'm going to just tell you, you a bad somebody.
Yeah, I mean, so when you really look at it and you tell me, and you want my 43% of the population to help fund your project, I can assure you, Ms. Waddell, you have a no vote from Florida.
But Mr. Floyd, but here's the crazy part. And this is what I was talking to Ralph about, because again, I think when you understand the dynamic of business, it's I'm going to give you something. What you going to give me for my people? So here's the question that should have been asked of the council. If we're going to do this, if we're going to move this project from the area that we've said it should go, what if we do XYZ, what can you do to help stimulate the economy along the Murchison Road corridor? What type of private investment can you make in this area? Because you're getting ready to get a huge win right here.
Chief, you all bought the property down there.
Floyd, it's about negotiation. It's about they lack this council for at least 10 years. I have observed they lack the art of negotiation.
You swap when you come off the Rowan Street Bridge. You bought all that property over there,
right?
Which is in the flood area that you all told the public that you're gonna sell the police building downtown because
it's prime real estate. Yeah.
Flood zone. Come on, T.
But Floyd, all I'm saying is I'm not saying it's bad business to have partners in the private space. What I'm saying is it's bad business to do what your partners in the private space ask you to do and not get anything for your people in return. That's bad business.
Teach, I understand that, Teach, but many politicians don't understand that politics is one word:
negotiation. And and I'm gonna tell you, and for any council member that's watching this, y'all need to go sit down and talk to Ralph Huff, because this man is very intelligent. When I tell you, Mr. Floyd, and I'm talking about when it comes to the development space, but sometimes people don't understand how to approach smart, capable people. But somebody needs to go sit down with him and pick up the conversation where I left it off in regards to if the city puts in the infrastructure along the Murchison Road corridor, what type of an investment can you make, Mr. Huff, to help move forward the economic mobility of this corridor? It might be too late, though, because Fayetteville State is killing it down on that end right now.
Yeah, well, Fayetteville State right now, I mean, with the new chancellor, they are revamping, as you mentioned, the Bronco Square, and they're going to open the Chick-fil-A. I think it's September the 1st.
And baby, when that Chick-fil-A opens, it's over with for the Murchison Road corridor because every Chick-fil-A brings traffic.
I'm telling about it. I carried my daughter yesterday, and so when I pulled into Chick-fil-A, my daughter told me, "No, you got to go around."
Yeah.
I mean, I thought when I pulled in that I was getting in the line. She said, "No, you got to go around."
We get at the end of the line.
I mean, the service was great now.
Absolutely, and the food is good, but it's something about Chick-fil-A. They pray over that business because it's something about it that just is a magnet for business, for economic boom.
But one thing that they have not forced that lady to do, and then moving on, is to open on Sunday.
They're not gonna do it.
She not.
They're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it. Mr. Floyd
has sued her about not being open on Sunday, but
they're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it, and they're gonna stay busy, and it ain't nothing we can do about that because they're not gonna do it, and it's gonna stay busy, and that's just that. Mr. Floyd, here's another article that I came across that I thought was very interesting because from the very beginning, if you go back and watch my response to COVID-19, I was never on the bandwagon of encouraging everybody to get vaccinated or thinking that everybody should be forced to wear masks. I felt like that was a very personal decision. I did, however, feel like if we as the leadership were going to be taking this position as a body, that we needed to be responsible in how we did it. So I never came out one way or another with a personal stance. However, we see now 4 years post-pandemic, Cumberland County's Department of Public Health is normalizing COVID-19 response. Floyd, what does that mean in your estimation?
That's a good question, Chief.
Well, what the article states is that they are now dealing with COVID-19 like any other respiratory virus, and they're just recommending that you get your vaccinations and that you, if you feel so inclined, that you wear a mask when you don't feel well. Mr. Floyd, this should have been, I know that COVID-19 was an unknown when it kind of came on the scene, but I think sometimes we take a very harsh position that puts a lot of people in a really weird position when sometimes we should just step back, slow down with our judgment and our execution of policy, and be deliberate in thinking about how to approach a situation. I think this is a more appropriate response to treat it like any other.
I mean, at that time you couldn't do that because so many people were departing. Okay, and so you
Mr. Floyd, but they were,
slow
but
down.
realistically, there were a lot of things that were being called COVID-related deaths that were not COVID-related deaths. Everything was being called a COVID-related death at that time.
I'm not down there, but I do know a lot of my friends left here. A lot of my friends left here. So, it was what we had at that time to address a situation that this country was facing. In fact, the whole global world was facing.
Yeah, but many people have very different responses than we had here in the United States. And I think they had very different outcomes also. But I will say this, I think when it comes to a person's health, I think you should do what you think you should do. And if you think you should get a vaccination every year to protect you against a respiratory virus, I think you should do that.
I mean, no doubt it's a choice. Okay, it's a choice. But even at the Army standpoint of view, that they were looking at the fact now, restating some of those personnel that refused to take it. So it was what was given at that particular time.
Right. And there have been a lot of lawsuits. Like if you look at New York State, there have been a lot of lawsuits for people who were forced to leave their jobs because now there's no real evidence saying that that was the best course of action, which is again why I say sometimes, and I'm just saying this to the people, y'all don't be so quick. Every time the government says go do this or else, slow down a little bit because everything that don't nobody know everything. And you see the number of mistakes locally, statewide, and nationally that our government makes, Give yourself some time to be able to really observe and figure stuff out before you run out and just go do something. Now, Floyd, we got a lot going on nationally because this is an election cycle, but we also have a lot going on at our state level. So there's a conversation afoot because it appears as if your governing boards are going back into a short session. What are they? What does this mean? What's happening?
If they go back, I think I think that there's still some concerns about opportunity scholarship money.
Okay.
Okay, and that money is that many families want and need in order to send their kids to various, charter schools
Right.
here. So the question of it is, even if the General Assembly convenes next week, those bills are 3 day bills. The bill is
Right.
a 3 day bill, both in the Senate and the House.
Right.
And our school system is going to open somewhere around the 22nd or the 24th of next month. So that window will be it's too short to distribute that money to the family that are
Right.
needing
And
it.
they're saying that Republicans in the House and Senate have not been able to agree on a plan to provide nearly $500 million in additional money to clear the 55,000 student waiting list for the Opportunity Scholarship Program. And
It's
so
hard.
there are,
It's hard casting.
okay. Well, and it says time is running short for families because many private schools are starting the new school year this month. Last year, the Republican-controlled General Assembly created what they called the universal school choice by eliminating income eligibility limits for getting private school vouchers. They saw a record of total of nearly 72,000 applicants, and of that, it just placed a really high demand on the program. And at this point, they just got to work to clear that backlog. And apparently, in May, the Senate passed a bill to provide the nearly $500 million. It went to the House Republicans' leadership. They wanted the increased voucher funding coupled with pay raises for teachers and other increases in public school spending. So there's where the discrepancy is coming in. They're saying we'll do this if you can tie it to this. Of course, you're always going to get. It would seem, Mr. Floyd, that this would be kind of a no-brainer because both the Republicans and the Democrats seem to be saying we want better pay for our teachers. What's the politics behind this?
The politics is that the Senate is more conservative than the House. The Senate don't think that you should spend this additional money. That they want to keep this. Although they say they had $1 billion in
Right.
there, but the Senate want to keep some of that money and put it in their rainy day fund. The House want to spend it.
Okay.
So therefore, they're going to have to be a happier media. Uh, uh,
Than the one that's being discussed.
yes.
So, and what we saw Speaker of the House Tim Moore say is that the reality is that we know that Governor Cooper would veto it anyway. He's already signaled. And so, as a practical matter, coming back to do a veto override before school starts, it simply isn't possible. So, what you said is there's just not the time there for that to
The
happen.
time is not there to work it out, and you know that Cooper does not like the program itself. So
Right.
that you're gonna have he is going to veto that, and then he have X days in order to determine what he's going to do. I think it's 10 days of what he's going to do. So,
Okay.
and I know based on his past history, he's not going to let it become law. So he's going to veto that, and then the House and Senate both going to have to reconvene in order to override his veto. So the
Okay.
timing for that, I'm talking about the timing, not the possibility of the overriding that can be done, but the timing is not there to get the money in the hands of the family.
So, Mr. Floyd, let me ask you this because I want to touch on one more topic before we leave our podcast today. Mr. Floyd, there has been listen.
Mhm.
I was kind of nervous when I started recognizing that Governor Cooper's name was actually being tied to VP Kamala Harris as a potential vice president pick nationally. Because originally, when I was hearing it, I was only hearing it with local media. When I started hearing it on the national stage, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And here's why: because y'all know that I am really pushing for I'm still pushing for this investigation into the allegations that I made. I'm hopeful that one day our community will come together and say, we want somebody to investigate these allegations made by Councilwoman Waddell before as she left her position. So because I'm pushing for that, I recognize that I'm looking for agencies like the SBI, the FBI, somebody, anybody with the ability to actually subpoena records to be about this investigation. But when I started hearing that, I said, well, good Lord, the president and the vice president have autonomy over these agencies. That would just really not be great because Cooper has a relationship with the people who I'm asking to be investigated. So I was very, very happy when I saw the removal of his name, that he removed himself from consideration. I knew that the reason was going to come out, that he was going to say it's because he didn't want to give Mark Robinson, that optics or that stage
Let
to
me
be able
stop.
to campaign.
Let me stop you.
Go ahead.
Mark Robinson would not be the lieutenant governor had the Democrat Party
Had the support of
Holly. Would not be the lieutenant governor. The party did not support her. Okay?
So, and what you have been saying to me all along was that he did not do a good job getting Democrats elected down the ticket.
Down the ticket. Okay. So if you look at it from that, yes, our governor won his 2 elections, but down the ticket,
he ain't helped nobody else.
Yeah, the national
and he lost a seat to a Republican by challenging you.
Yeah. I mean, they look at all of this stuff when they begin to look at people that
they also do background screens. And I'm gonna tell y'all might think I'm crazy. I tell y'all this all the time. Y'all might think I'm crazy with what I said in that letter, but I assure you it's something to what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about, Mr. Floyd. So you never know what these background screens then turned up. Y'all better push for an investigation.
Yeah, so when you look at the same thing that you said about Biden, that if Biden continued to stay in the race, that he would hurt the down ticket.
Right.
So it's the same thing that they look at. How is that person able to deliver the state to them to get those electoral votes, those 14, 16
right
votes?
Right. And I want to say something. Go ahead.
We have not been successful as a party to win statewide elections because we have not had the support as it relates to the state party, the executive branch, and looking at the competitive districts that would help us win. We still vote on how we feel about the person, not looking at the competitive district. The race that I was in was a competitive district. Summarizing, in 12 years of running for public office, the Democrat Party gave me less than $100.
Right.
Okay.
And I want to say this about Vice President Kamala Harris, because I think it's so important for our constituency to be aware of this statement of fact. Black women still don't have basic protections or basic concessions regarding their safety, their security, or the way they are permitted to perform the duties of their job. I think that one of the things that I'm most concerned about, and I saw this twice, where I can show you literally it happening in real time. The first time that I saw it was when I was at NLC in Washington, D.C. Maxine Waters was a speaker at one of the events that I went to. And when she finished speaking, they were trying to move her from the room that she was speaking in into a private room. As they were moving her, Mr. Floyd, I observed her being essentially mobbed by the people who were in proximity with her. Now, keep in mind, there are no safety protocols when you're at NLC. You're not walking through security. There are no safety protocols. So she was essentially mobbed and she was moved into this private room. And interestingly enough, my mother and I both ended up in this room with her, along with many of the people who were in the audience. So her safety and security was jeopardized. She did not have a team of people who made sure that this little bitty woman was secured. I saw it again with Kamala Harris during, I want to say it was a debate or a speaking engagement, and this was back in probably 2020. Someone was able to rush onto the stage and get within inches of her, and it was another woman who had to come to her defense to separate that person from her. I say all this to say that we need to be very mindful of the fact that as this woman is running for the highest office in the nation, if you pray to God in Jesus' name, pray for her safety, because there's not a lot that goes into making sure that Black women are kept safe. And I recognize that there may be a lot of people who don't understand that, but every Black woman who is hearing this is probably doing this right now. So whether you agree with her politics or not, pray for her safety, because this is a situation where we have somebody on the national stage, whether you agree, because I don't agree with her politics, but that doesn't make her less human to me. So please pray for her safety. Also, Mr. Floyd, I'm with all of that being said, I'm interested to see who she will pick as her VP, because it makes me wonder what the agenda is in setting her up as the nominee for the Democrat Party.
Well, I think the agenda is going to come later, but right now, you know, she has a 99 or 98 day window before the election. And so the first, like you said, is selecting that VP. Second is establishing her own agenda that she would like to see the nation move towards. They've been said that the two, Trump and also Biden, they was too old to have a vision for the future, and so they're waiting to see what is she
Which is
going to
so interesting, because when Biden was still in the race, all the Democrats said that's not the case. That's not the case. So now that he's out of the race, facing him, and Trump is facing a much younger opponent, now all of a sudden that's the case. But I just think that's politics for you.
But that's that's politics. But the key thing that's affecting the American, I mean, immigration is one thing, but it goes back to what we talked about here with the governor withdrawing. I think that the handwriting was on the wall that based upon the down ticket, that the success for bringing our state over to 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 be that winning
That he
situation.
wasn't going to be able to do that.
It, it,
Yeah.
it
And
had not.
sometimes we got to understand the way, and that's why we exist, to make understanding politics simple. We understand, you have taught me that it's not just about what you see, it's about what you don't see. And so in this conversation, what you don't see is her pick is going to be all about securing whatever state that might be a swing state, securing them to be able to gain their electoral votes in this
But
election.
and it takes, I think it's 270 to 270 electoral votes. The
Hmm.
same like the virtual meeting that they're going to have. I think it's August the 5th or 7th to look at the the convention votes, which is about 2,000 or less than 2,000. So once they get that by the virtual meeting, it would allow her to pick one of those three or four
I think we
people.
should keep our eyes on Pennsylvania. I think we should keep our eyes on Pennsylvania, because that was a big state that was in play during the last election. Mr. Floyd, what do you want to leave our audience with?
Quit being bamboozled.
That's so good.
Quit
That's so
being
good. And I'll say that in this season where there's so much fear mongering that's going on, there's so much divisiveness, so much of a push to make you feel anxious about what's going on. I just want to remind you two things that the Bible tells us. The first is be anxious for nothing, but to submit everything to the Lord in prayer. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that perfect love casts out fear. So I want everybody to remember that our Heavenly Father loves us perfectly. We may not know how to love perfectly, but He loves us perfectly. And if you will hold on to that love, it can cast out all fear. And you can just walk in favor and faith. And Mr. Floyd, It's always a pleasure to share this platform with you. I've learned so much over the last couple of years listening to you explain things. I want you to remind people where they can go and get more of you and some of Troy, and that's on WIDU. And when does that program air?
It's every other Tuesday
Every other Tuesday. What time?
at 9 o'clock.
At 9 o'clock on WIDU. So make sure that you tune in. You can find that also, I believe, on Facebook Live, because I'm pretty sure that they stream. And just make sure that you tell a friend, like, share, subscribe, and follow, because this is where we are giving you what we have to give you so that you can learn how to think through all of this. Until then, Floyd, you got anything else you want to leave our people with?
Quit being bamboozled.
Quit being bamboozled, and we'll catch you on the next episode.